so it doesn't fall into enemy hands.
The desert sun in Kandahar doesn't just heat your skin, it bleaches your soul. I remember the smell of diesel and the sound of my brother's laugh. Jai was always the optimist, talking about the Rangers like it was some holy pilgrimage we were destined for. We had the ink to prove it. DFQ, don't F asterisk 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 and quit. 1 minute, we were joking about stop leak, fixing a busted radiator. And the next, the world turned into fire and screaming metal. An ambush. In the chaos, I saw him go down. I carried him, heavy and limp, across the sand until my lungs burned and the base gates were finally in sight. But I was too late. I collapsed just short of the line, cradling the only family I had left. They gave me a silver star for that day, but all I felt was the weight of a broken promise. Now, years later, I'm back at the start. I'm not a name anymore. I'm just 81. I'm the oldest recruit in the Ranger Assessment and Selection Program, a human mountain of scar, tissue, and silence. The instructors, Sheridan and Torres, look at me like I'm a ticking time bomb. They aren't wrong. I'm not here to make friends or lead a squad. I'm here because I owe a dead man a green beret, and I won't stop until I've crossed that final finish line, even if it kills me. 8 weeks of hell have led to this. My body is a roadmap of pain, but my mind is locked on the objective. We're at the Rocky Mountains for the Death March, the final recon and rescue simulation. It's supposed to be 24 hours of brutal hiking, navigating by map and compass, and avoiding the enemy cadres. If we make it to the extraction point in time, we earn the scroll. I look at the guys around me. Number 7, number 44, number 60. They're kids, mostly. They see me as Superman, the guy who doesn't eat or sleep, but they don't see the ghost of my brother walking right beside me. Sheridan pulls me aside before the drop. He tells me that everything has a breaking point and that I'm pushing toward a self-destruction that won't help anyone. He wants me to lead, to actually connect with these men, but I turn away. Leadership is a liability. If I don't care about them, I won't feel it when they fall. We load into the Blackhawks, the rotors thumping a steady rhythm against my ribcage. The cold mountain air hits my face as we hover over the LZ. This is the last hurdle. 24 hours stands between me and the peace I promised Jai. We hit the ground running, disappearing into the thick timber. It was supposed to be a simple training exercise. We had no idea the world was about to change. The mountain was quiet, almost too quiet. We were moving through a narrow ravine when the sky decided to split open. It wasn't thunder. It was a screeching metallic roar that vibrated in my teeth. Something massive streaked across the gray horizon, trailing a plume of strange, violet smoke. It hit the ridge above us with the force of a tectonic shift. The ground buckled, sending a shower of pine needles and granite down onto our position. My ears were ringing, and for a second, I was back in Kandahar, smelling the cordite in the dust. Recon only, I told the squad, trying to keep my voice steady. We assumed it was part of the simulation, maybe a down drone or a stage crash for us to investigate. Number 7, a kid with more heart than sense, looked at me for direction. I didn't want the responsibility, but the instinct took over. We climbed the ridge, our boots slipping on the loose scree. When we reached the crest, the sight stopped us cold. It wasn't a plane. It was a jagged, obsidian hull buried deep in the earth, venting a cold blue mist that made our electronic compasses spin like tops. The air tasted like ozone and old pennies. Whatever this was, it didn't belong to any military I knew. We stood at the edge of the crater, staring into the dark heart of the wreckage, unaware that the hunter had already arrived. We should have turned back the moment the comms went dead. The static in our headsets was a physical weight, a jagged wall of white noise that cut us off from the world. Against my better judgment, we moved closer to the wreckage. It looked like a brutalist sculpture made of shadow and hate. As number 60 reached out to touch a jagged shard of the hull, the metal didn't just vibrate, it breathed. A low-frequency hum rattled my bones, and then the lights came on. Not lights like we know them, but flickering, predatory pulses of neon blue. the wreckage began to unfold. It was a bipedal nightmare, a towering mechanical monstrosity that moved with the fluid grace of an insect. It rose from the dirt, shedding debris like a dog shakes off water. It stood nearly 20 feet tall, its limbs a chaotic assembly of gears and energy conduits. We were standing there with training rifles and blank ammunition, staring at a god of war from another galaxy. Its head swiveled toward us, a single glowing aperture scanning our heat signatures. In that moment, the training exercise ended. The simulation was dead. I saw the weapon mount on its shoulder begin to glow, and the primal instinct to survive screamed louder than any drill sergeant ever could. "Run!" I bellowed, but the machine was already faster. The first blast didn't just hit the trees, it vaporized them. Survival is a game of inches and heartbeats. We scrambled into the dense undergrowth as the machine began its harvest. The sound of its footsteps was like a pile driver hitting the earth. Thump, 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 rhythmic and relentless. I watched number 44 get pinned behind a fallen log. The machine didn't even slow down. It just swept a laser across the timber, and the wood exploded into splinters. We were being hunted like rats in a cellar. I grabbed number 7 by his tactical vest and hauled him behind a granite outcrop, just as a blue energy bolt turned the air where he'd been standing into a vacuum. "It's not real. It can't be real," he was sobbing. I slapped him, not out of anger, but to bring him back to the dirt. "It's real enough to kill you," I hissed. We realized quickly that our weapons were useless toys. The machine didn't care about our tactics or our grit. It was a processor, and we were just data points to be deleted. We had to move toward the base, but the machine was cutting off the main trails, herding us toward the higher, deadlier peaks. It was playing with us, testing our speed, our endurance, and our fear. Every time we thought we had lost it in the fog, those blue eyes would pierce through the mist, closer than before. The forest, once our training ground, had become our coffin. The first casualty wasn't quick. It was a calculated strike. The machine used a pulse of energy to collapse a ledge, sending number 109 tumbling into a ravine. When we reached the edge to help him, the machine was already there, hovering above like a gargoyle. It didn't fire immediately. It watched. It was studying how we reacted to our wounded. This thing wasn't just a weapon. It was an intelligence. I saw the way it adjusted its sensors to track our panicked breathing. I made the call to move. We couldn't save 109, and the guilt felt like a physical blade in my gut. As we retreated, the machine let out a sound that I can only describe as a mechanical scream, a dissonant screech that echoed off the canyon walls. It began to pick us off, one by one, with terrifying precision. It wasn't using its heavy cannons anymore. It was using smaller, needle-like projectiles that tore through Kevlar like paper. We were losing men, and the Superman they looked up to was just as helpless as they were. My shoulder was bleeding from shrapnel nick, the heat of the alien metal cauterizing the wound instantly. I looked at the remaining 4 of us. We were exhausted, terrified, and miles from help. I realized then that the machine didn't want to just kill us. It wanted to see what happened when we reached our breaking point. The river was our only hope for a clean break. The current was swollen from the spring melt, a churning white ribbon of ice and fury. I ordered the squad into the water. If the machine tracked us by heat or scent, the frigid water might mask us. We plunged in, the cold hitting like a physical blow, knocking the wind from my lungs. We were swept downstream, bouncing off jagged rocks that bruised us to the bone. I looked back and saw the machine standing on the bank, its sensors sweeping the surface. It didn't like the water. It hesitated. For a moment, I thought we had a chance. But then, the camera of my mind panned ahead. The roar of the water changed from a growl to a thunderous boom. A waterfall, a 50-foot drop into a rocky basin. We had traded a mechanical hunter for a natural executioner. I grabbed number 7's collar as we went over the edge. The fall felt like an eternity, a weightless suspension in a cloud of spray and terror. We hit the bottom, and the world went black for a second. When I surfaced, gasping for air, the river had scattered us. I found 7 washed up on a sandbar, his leg twisted at an angle that made my stomach turn. He was alive, but he couldn't walk. And through the mist at the top of the falls, I saw the blue glow of the machine. It had found a way down. The machine was coming, but it was slow, navigating the steep cliffs. I had a choice. I could leave number 7 and make a run for the base. I was fast enough. I could make it. But I looked at his face, and all I saw was Jai. I saw the same fear, the same desperate hope that someone would stay. Sheridan's words about the starting line rang in my head. Being a ranger wasn't about the individual. It was about the man next to you. I didn't care about the scroll anymore. I cared about the life in my hands. I splinted his leg with a broken branch and my belt, his screams muffled by the roar of the river. "I've got you," I told him. It was the first time I'd spoken to him as a human, not a number. I hoisted his frame, all 200 pounds of him, onto my back. Every step was an agony of strained muscles and grinding joints. The mud tried to suck my boots down, and the uphill climb was a vertical hell. Behind us, the machine had reached the valley floor. It was moving faster now, its scanners pulsing with a frantic energy. It knew it was losing its specimens. I didn't look back. I just focused on the rhythm of my breath and the weight on my shoulders. Don't F*** and quit. The mantra became my heartbeat. I wasn't running for a grade. I was running for redemption. We reached a narrow pass where the mountains squeezed the trail into a bottleneck. I couldn't carry 7 through the steep rocks anymore without being caught. I hid him in a small crevice, covering him with pine boughs and dirt. "Stay quiet," I whispered. "No matter what happens, don't move." I took the remaining training flares and a few discarded live rounds we'd scavenged from a dead cadre's pack. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make a noise. I led the machine away from 7, making myself the biggest target in the woods. I climbed a jagged spire of rock, standing silhouetted against the moonlight. The machine saw me. It stopped, its central light glowing a deep, angry crimson. It recognized me, the one who wouldn't break. It fired a sequence of energy bolts that turned the rock under my feet into slag. I dived, rolling through the embers, my skin blistering from the heat. I managed to lure it toward a precarious overhang. My goal wasn't to destroy it. I wasn't that delusional, but to delay it. I triggered the flares, the blinding white light momentarily overloading its optical sensors. In that split second of its confusion, I saw the machine tilt, its massive weight shifting on the loose ground. It let out that horrific screech again, a sound of pure digital frustration. I was just a man, but for the first time, I felt the machine's hesitation. I went back for 7. He was still there, shivering but alive. The machine was still out there, recovering, but I had bought us the time we needed. The final miles were a blur of gray trees and red paint. I didn't feel my feet anymore. I just felt the obligation. The sun began to peek over the eastern ridges, casting long, golden shadows that looked like bars on a cage. We finally saw it, the perimeter fence of the base. It was a hive of activity. Helicopters were scrambling, and armored vehicles were tearing out of the gates. They had seen the asteroid. They knew the war had started. I didn't stop until I reached the white line of the finish line. I crossed it with 7 still on my back, my knees finally giving out. I collapsed into the dirt, the dust of the base tasting just like the dust of Kandahar. Sheridan was there, looking down at me, his face a mask of shock and respect. I didn't say a word about the machine. I just looked at my hand at the DFQ tattoo, and I knew I had finally finished the mission Jai started. As the medics swarmed 7 and the alarms blared for an invasion we weren't prepared for, I closed my eyes for the first time in days. I wasn't number 81 anymore. I was a ranger, and the real war was just beginning.